Hi, welcome back to Tea and Forget-Me-Nots. I'm Rachel and today I'll be sharing how I repurposed a CD rack into something beautiful. And if you're interested in more projects like this, I share them on my blog at teaandforgetmenots.com, and also there are posts such as how to find free furniture to upcycle. Okay, let's get into it.
Today's project is this CD rack, which I got for free on Facebook Marketplace. Now this project turned out to be a project of two halves. I actually started it last year. So I initially started by dismantling the entire CD rack, including taking out all of the different shelves which had a lot of holes that needed filling in, with an initial plan of turning the CD rack into a planter for the garden. However, at this point last year, I accidentally split one of the end panels completely in half, so it would no longer be fit for purpose. After a gap of about 9 months, it was finally finished with a different purpose in the end, as you'll see. So these are the products that I ended up using for the final piece. And the inspiration for this design was these little blue and white mosaic tiles. I did a coat of Zinza 123, which is a water-based primer, and then used Fusion mineral paint in sterling, which is a light grey. And I had a stencil called the Sonoma Art Tile Stencil, which I thought was a perfect match for these mosaic tiles, so I wanted to use them in combination. So the new piece I was going to create is a jewellery holder. As the main idea was to use this tile stencil, I used my miter saw to cut the wood down to size so that it would fit the stencil nicely, which would fit 3 tiles in width. So I used the 2 solid wood pieces, one for the main piece, the back of the jewellery holder, and the other as a small shelf. And to ensure the holes were in the right place, I used a set square to line up the shelf and the back of the piece. I drilled all of my holes before doing the final paint coats, just to make sure that the holes were in the right place, and when refitting it together, I didn't want to scratch the new paint in any way. To secure the shelf in place, I put 3 screws through the back of the main piece and into the shelf so that they matched. Please consider subscribing, as it makes a huge difference to smaller channels like mine. I fitted the whole piece together to make sure that the shelf would be level and that I wouldn't need to do any adjustments after I'd painted it. And in what was probably by now about the 17th coat of paint on this piece, I did 3 additional coats of white, which was fluff from the Dixie Belle chalk mineral paint range. I also painted a wooden dowel in the same colour white that I would attach to the shelf to be able to hang something like bracelets or watches or rings off of. Now if you have fiddly bits of a stencil, it's a good idea to use stencil spray to stick it down to the project, because if they're loose then the paint is more likely to bleed under those bits. So I secured it with both frog tape on the edges and stencil spray for the middle sections. A good idea is to do a first coat in the base colour of your project. So in this case it's white, so I did the entire stencil in 1 coat of white first. This just gives the top layer of the stencil something to stick to and is less likely to bleed. I removed the stencil between coats because if you have the stencil spray down for any length of time, sometimes it leaves a sticky residue. So I lined up the stencil for the second coat and I used this light blue colour Quiet Cove. So use a small amount of paint as you can get away with. Sometimes this can feel like the process takes a really long time. And if you find yourself getting impatient, I recommend just stopping for a little while. Otherwise you might put too much paint on. And then to finish off the stencil, I added a dark blue colour Deep Sea just around some of the details. And I think the combination of the white fluff, the Quiet Cove and the Deep Sea really matched the mosaic tiles perfectly. I then sealed the whole piece in 2 coats of clear coat in satin, just to give it that added protection and also a nice shine as it is a jewellery holder. Then to turn this into a functional jewellery holder, I needed to add the gold hooks. So I attached the white dowel into the shelf with 2 large hooks, large enough that you can lift the dowel off to the front rather than sliding it along, otherwise your jewellery would fall off. And for the necklace hooks along the bottom, I put a piece of frog tape down to make sure that it was in line, and marked out a space of 9 hooks that were equal distance along the bottom, with each of the end hooks in line with the hooks holding up the dowel, so it was nice and symmetrical. And if you don't know about this fun little trick, you can put one of the hooks in the end of the drill and actually screw them in that way. Just place the hook by hand to start with so it's secure, and then drill them in slowly, and it's quite a fun little way of inserting them. And for the final bit of decoration, I had this entire sheet full of mosaic tiles to choose from. I found that the back of some of them had a few holes in them, so they weren't ideal because I wouldn't have as much surface area to add the glue and make sure that they were completely secure. So I chose 5 tiles that I thought looked nice together, and then attached them with some Gorilla Glue that I'd mixed up, and they set really securely. And here it is in its finished form, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. It's a far cry from the unloved and unwanted CD rack that it started as. Now it's both pretty and has a purpose, which is what upcycling is all about. This piece is going to Homemade at the Barn if you're local to Hertfordshire in England, and I'll leave a comment as to whether it's still available. I hope you enjoyed this video. Until next time, thanks so much for watching. Bye! If you'd like to know more about the products or recreate this look for yourself, then I'll link the products below for you to take a look.